Good afternoon, Vice Chairperson Chavez.
Hi, Jill. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. You're all set.
Thank you. I don't need to see it.
Recording in progress.
All right, good afternoon. Today is September 21st, 2021. It's about 2 p.m. now. We would like to go ahead and call the meeting to order of our FGOC. Let me get to here. Thank you. So first of all, yes, welcome everyone. I am Supervisor Audit. I'm honored to chair the FGOC, the Finance Government Operations Committee, along with my Vice Chair, Supervisor Cindy Chavez today. And I'll ask my other members of our committee to introduce themselves, starting with our county executive.
Hello, my name is Jeff Smith. I'm the county executive, County of Santa Clara. Miguel.
Let's see, do I see?
Hello, this is Greg Ituria, County Budget Director.
Thank you. I guess everybody's a little shy today, but that's okay.
We have a shy team. Maybe
That's-
Ken Bender can introduce himself. I guess not.
I'm not sure if Undersheriff heard you, but yes, that's we have Undersheriff here, Kim Binder. Anyway, so and I will go ahead and say with both supervisors present, we certainly have a quorum, and this takes us to the first item of our agenda, which is public comment. This item is reserved for persons desiring to address the committee on any matter that's not on this agenda today. Members of the public who wish to address this committee on any item not listed on the agenda should request to speak at this issue. Individuals will be called to speak in turn. Speakers are limited to different amount of time depending on how many people are speaking. So, clerk, how many people do we have right now?
We currently have one request to speak, Mr. Chair.
Okay, then we'll designate 3 minutes then.
All right.
The law does not permit the committee action or extended discussion on any items that's not on the agenda, except under special circumstances. So if committee action is requested, the committee may place the matter on the future agenda. Statements that require response may be referred to staff in writing. And clerk, so let's go set up for 3 minutes. And do we still only have one speaker?
We do still only have one speaker currently, Mr. Chair.
Okay, let's go ahead and open that up, please. Thank you.
All right. One moment, please. We'll get the timer up. The next speaker is Scott Largent. Please accept the unmute. I am unmuting you. You have 3 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Scott Largent. Yesterday, out at the crash zone in front of our airport, they did the final posting for Zone 3. No, I'm sorry to say, it's actually Zone 1, which is over near Heading, Coleman, Taylor, and Walnut. Now, a lot of people, and I kind of try to keep you guys up to speed because this is right in your backyard, are being all sandwiched and squished into Zone 3. It's created it's created a very bad situation. The people that we should be protecting, the elderly, the disabled, they're the ones that are terrified now to go into Zone 3. And I really don't blame them. We kind of started to scout things out. Scott Wagers and myself, Richard Scott, homeless advocate. We've been trying to find a good area to put the Mercy Mobile and then also my RV that's out there. If we go to Zone 3, we're okay for the next 6 months. It's scary to be in Zone 3. And since there's no other options right now as far as safe parking, where do we go? And where do we send these people? I have a group now that I've put together of about 16 different RVs. Some of them are the Mexican families that are near where my RV is at, near the 7-Eleven. There's 4 RVs there. There's another gentleman, he's a combat war veteran. Hopefully he'll be joining us farther down the way. We have a woman that is also homeless, works for Safeway, African-American gal. She's fantastic. There's another elderly gal that is disabled, only gets about $1,100 a month in SSI. These are the vulnerable people that we really should be helping. They're not the ones that are parting out vehicles, stabbing people. They're not burning stuff down. They're just stuck in a bad situation. And I'm begging you guys to get involved right now. It's just pretty sad when they remain in Zone 1. They have 6 days until they're technically trespassing and their vehicles and RVs get towed, but they don't want to move farther down. They're scared. And we need to do the right thing. We can't wait another week. These articles that came out talking about getting all these tiny homes and you know, blah, blah, this and money from the state. And that's not going to change what is happening right now. And there's no other way that other than, it just seems so wrong. It seems so wrong that nobody's doing anything right now. And law enforcement has completely stood down. They're not doing anything over there. Recipe for disaster is brewing right now. And once everybody gets pushed out, they are going to become the county buildings problem. They're going to become the courts problem right there. And it's just going to kind of flush all the way over there. Let's kind of vet out the people we can help right now. Please. Thank you.
Next speaker is Richard Scott. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hi, I'd like to support what Scott Largent is saying. There is the reason that we haven't had suits around the Martin versus Boise is because we pretend we're offering alternatives to people when we go and sweep them off the sites. The truth is that, and I would encourage each of you on this call to try to call the numbers that are given as for the numbers for housing, shelters, safe parking. you won't find that they really don't exist. There's no, we have called, excuse me, I know that Scott Largent has called these numbers. Many of us have called these numbers. There is really nothing available. I think the county and the city are opening up themselves to great lawsuits. We have the fairgrounds, which I believe you're going to talk on a little later, that could be used to house people. It's now underutilized. It's the most underutilized fairgrounds in the state of California. The percentage of use is unbelievable, and the land sits there begging to be used for humanitarian reasons. I would really, excuse me, encourage you all to consider that. It's unfortunate on these calls that we cannot get direct responses from either you guys on the board or the city council when we have those meetings, that, you know, people sit there with their eyes glazed over and then go on, and the questions that we ask are never answered. So I want to really encourage you. I know some of you are in support of that. Some of you have always opposed it. We've got to keep the lawyers from running our county and do what is right. I don't need any more time. Thank you very much.
That concludes our request to speak.
Yeah, Mr. Scott, it would ask you to leave your contact information, your email, and your phone number if you can with our clerk. We certainly can have a follow-up discussion on your questions. Thank you very much. Okay, and then moving on to the next item on the agenda is item number 3, receiving management audit of mental health services and forward recommendations to board supervisors for consideration. And for being here to present this this item, I believe, is it Sheriff Soloff?
Yes, Supervisor.
Yes, good afternoon. And yes, if we could, so yes, first of all, thank you for being here, and we're looking forward to receive your highlights on these audits and allow us to ask some questions. So please proceed.
Yes, and I understand that there's a good bit of time pressure on today, and so it's at the discretion of the committee if you would like us to have a short presentation, or if you would like to just have us available to answer questions.
I think a very brief presentation will be helpful for the audience as well. And then we could go ahead and go straight to question after that. Yes, please proceed.
Okay, well, I'll ask Dan Goncher on our team to present.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Lee and Supervisor Chavez. I'm Dan Goncher with the Management Audit Division, and I'll just give a few highlights from our management audit of the behavioral health services. Our audit was completed in September of 2020, and the purpose was to examine the operations, management practices, and finances of behavioral health services to identify opportunities to increase the efficiency, effectiveness, and economy of the department's provision of mental health services. The report includes 9 findings and 25 recommendations. And as of the time when the report was released, the department agreed with 14 recommendations, partially agreed with 8, and provided no response for 3 because they were directed to the Board of Supervisors. The first section covered department spending and outlook. The second section of our report covers the department's slow spending of Mental Health Service Act funds. The third section of our report covers the whole person care pilot, and that section included 2 recommendations, or section 1 included 2 recommendations as well, and section 2 included 1 recommendation. Section 4 of our report covered reducing the use of emergency and crisis services and included 4 recommendations with 1 recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. Section 5 of our report covered timely access to outpatient services and included 3 recommendations to the department. Section 6 of the report covered the shortage of residential care and boarding care facilities and included 4 recommendations with 2 to the Board of Supervisors. Section 7 of our report covered the quality and oversight of boarding care facilities and included 3 recommendations to the department. Section 8 of our report covered access to services on discharge and included 3 recommendations to the department. And finally, section 9 of our report covered performance monitoring of outpatient programs, included 3 recommendations with 1 to the Board of Supervisors. And so those are sort of the highlights of our report. Myself and our other audit team members are available for questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Since I know we are very limited on time today, I'm going to try to address questions on a couple of areas I would like to focus and possibly maybe deal with some of the other issues tomorrow at the HXC meeting. The questions I have right now on the ones I want to ask is regarding question on section number 2, regarding the issue of the slow spending of the Mental Health Services Act funds. So reviewing the recent BHSD finance presentation that was sent to us on September 14th, I see that the spending of the funds has been increased from the initial, not the initial proposal. So initial proposal, I believe, and the one that has been presented now, there's about $20 million additional spending that I was able to identify reading it. Maybe you could discuss where the extra 20 million will be going to, and how else can we do to try to get these services to our needy faster instead of keeping them in the reserves.
Shirley, I don't know if that question is directed to the Management Audit Division or to the department director.
I think it's for the department. I'm so sorry. Yes, absolutely. No, that's for the
Okay,
department.
sure, no worries.
Sorry about that.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Lee.
Good afternoon, Sherry.
Supervisor Chavez, Sherry Terrell with the Behavioral Health Services Department. Thank you for your question. I believe some of the information you reviewed at our most recent MHSA finance meeting outlined some of the additional revenue that we had not anticipated, and that was due to improved revenues around MHSA, which, as you're aware, is the tax on millionaires. And so
exactly.
Essentially we,
it's a good problem to have, isn't it?
It's a good problem to have. So what the slide did not fully represent was recent conversations that we've had with the public and stakeholders around additional programming that we will be proposing and has now since been published in our draft plan, which is currently out for public review. And that includes some additional programming costs around assisted outpatient treatment, as well as some programming for the Gender Health Center that would be more specifically designed behavioral health services to support transgender patients. And so some of those costs are not yet realized in the most recent presentation you reviewed. And so we understand that approximately an additional $12 million would be utilized out of the current unspent allocation, which would bring down the unspent balance a bit more. So we are, as you stated, really looking to effectively and efficiently move out these funds to be able to provide behavioral health services at this time. I also wanted to add, Supervisor, that part of the MHSA plan includes a component called innovation, and innovation funds are spent on specific projects that are time limited. And once that time limit and term of those innovation projects is completed, we then look to utilize other portions of the MHSA plan, primarily the community services and supports, or CSS portion, or sometimes the prevention and early intervention portion, to sustain the programs beyond their innovation timeline. And so really, when we're thinking about long-term sustainability of programming, we look at that unspent balance to be able to support some of those innovation projects, because once the innovation project turns out, you can no longer use innovation funds to provide those services. So for example, the board and the state recently approved the community mobile response, and that project is a 4.5-year project, upwards of $27 million. And so, thinking forward 4 years, when we know that that project will term out, we would have to be able to know that we have additional MHSA backing for those programs. So it's partly trying to figure out how do we, of course, provide services now while thinking about a long-term sustainability plan that would actually cover the cost of programs that we're now testing out as innovations. Hoping that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you, Sherry. So your point, I just want to summarize, would be because of the upcoming deadline for this innovation one-time fund, you want to spend that first, right? And then using MHSA to backfill it later on if it becomes an annual amount. That's, because of course MHSA is something that is ongoing, and then what we're finding, like you said, is because of millionaire tax, given how well the state's been doing collecting these tax from our more well-to-do residents, we're getting more revenues than we expected, right?
That's correct. And I do want to highlight that this fund tends to be volatile. We
Yes.
quite often reference that because it is dependent on, the number of millionaires and the tax returns that come in. And so what we experience is always a 2-year delay in the realization of those funds. So, 2 years from now, we'll be experiencing what the current economy is for millionaires. And so we're always looking at these projections a few years out.
Correct. So the fund balance, or whatever that you call it, reserve of the MHSA, I'm looking at the last few years, right, is anywhere from 79, 87, 89 million. And based on the most recent projection, we are supposed to draw down to about 70 million, right? So I guess my question for you is, do you actually have a rough figure that you think will be a good amount of reserve that we'll be aiming at, so that we certainly don't want to save all that when we could actually be using it?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's not as simple as I would like to be able to provide an answer. And I think it really ties to what I just shared, which is, these fairly sizable programs that we are currently, testing, for lack of a better word, through innovation will come to be 2-3 years out. For example, Alcove now is an innovation. So a few years from now, we'll have to think about Alcove and how will we fund it. And so it's partly, really thinking about a long-term sustainability strategy, so that when we, come 2 years down the line with Alcove, if, we elect to sustain that program, we do have the funds to do so. And so I think rather than more specifically state a specific amount of unspent that we would like to be able to keep, I think it's going to be important that we look at what we anticipate as coming forward as expenses in those years out. Think about what it would mean to allocate and reserve those funds while still maintaining, growing, and addressing the ongoing needs of mental health in our community and county. So I think what I'd like to say is I think we would need to really be able to come back and share probably a longer range vision around that.
Right. No, it's definitely a longer vision discussion. I thank you for the answer for now, but we certainly have more to work on in the future discussion. Thank you, Sherry. On section 6, that talks about the ability to track the occupancy throughout the county on the residential care facilities. Based on those recommendations, so how does BHSD actually currently track those capacity daily for these facility internally?
Sure. So right now we're currently tracking our contracted substance use treatment and mental health facilities. So those are programs that the Behavioral Health Services Department and county have contracts with. Contracted providers are asked to submit their daily capacity before 9 a.m. each day. And staff on our team are in daily communication with our contracted providers to obtain that capacity. It's really important, again, to note in these particular programs that there are many circumstances that contribute to fluctuations in bed capacity. For example, patients may leave a program, they may need a different level of care, and so that fluctuation often contributes to beds sometimes becoming available when we may not anticipate that. And so for now, what we're doing is tracking that on a daily basis.
Right. And are we able to provide that type of numbers like in real time, or how delayed is it at this point?
Well, we do track it on a daily basis at this point. If we were to do something real time, we'd have to really think about the resources. As I mentioned, changes happen on a day-to-day basis, sometimes hourly. And so if we were to create something more real time other than the daily capacity, we need to really think together about what resources might be needed to be able to capture that information in a more real-time basis.
Right, because it's almost like running a hotel operation, right? You need to know what's available, and then of course make it publicly available so that people would know where the resource available. We don't have any wasted bed for the night, for example. I've brought this up many times that I like to copy good ideas from other jurisdiction. There's example report from LA County in late 2019 about mental health, hospital bed capacity and utilization rate. And as we are considering a bed registry, right, to address the type of capacity reporting, I certainly would like to see if we can get the information similar to LA County on a dashboard of some sort, right? I think that would be very helpful, and we can move toward to that direction. And now, speaking of funding earlier, we talked about MHSA funding. Would that be considered one of these projects that could be qualified to use MHSA funding to develop?
I believe we could explore the opportunity for that funding. We are currently, as you stated, working on the development of a bed registry. And so, as you mentioned, LA County and some of the opportunities there. So we are planning to reach out and learn from, our neighboring counties to learn opportunities that can help improve our current system.
Okay, good. Then the last question on this is on 6.3 regarding the adopting the resolution imposing additional zoning controls and residential care, proposing changes of use. What are your thoughts about this one, outlining additional zoning controls on that?
Yeah, I believe that it was stated in the report referencing San Francisco and the implementation of zoning. So I think it might be helpful to, check in, as you stated, to look at LA for the bed registry. We could similarly do a reach out to San Francisco to see whether the implementation of those zoning laws actually supported an increase or retention of residential care facilities. So I think certainly that's something we could look at as well.
Great. Is it possible for us to maybe get off agenda on this in the future, or you could actually report back to us?
Yes, we can report back on that.
Thank you very much. Okay. And that's all the questions I have. And Supervisor Chavez, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you. And they're kind of questions and then some, I hope, direction, because we're going to receive the report today, I hope. And some of these questions, Sherry, in fairness, Dr. Smith may want to jump in, so I'll just warn him.
Sure.
So one is on item 4.4. This is the calendar twice a year reports from the Director of Behavioral Health on IFSP and ACT and IHOT on the regular agenda for discussion. I think I would just like to say we should say yes to that recommendation today. And then the second part of that is that we need to overall, as part of that action, be able to create both the capacity and need assessment. So we really annually and biannually, annually we should be checking in on that, but biannually we should be checking in on that. So when it's time for a motion, I'm going to make that recommendation under 4.4. Under 6.3, this is consider adopting a resolution that imposes additional zoning controls on residential care facilities, proposing a change of use. That's challenging because I'm not sure as a county we have the capacity to do that in cities. What I do want to just say is that on another item, if we're actually tracking care facilities, we can build a relationship that lets people know if they want to sell those facilities that we would be positioned to purchase them or to work with other nonprofit partners to do that. So on that front, I think we should look at whether or not there's a resolution, look at how we can work with the cities. But I think the bigger opportunity here is really in quantifying all the care facilities in the county, which, by the way, if we're using them to refer people to, we really should have access to them. So it doesn't really make sense that I know Sherry, you're in process of doing that. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, so part of that should be a partnership with those property owners and the operators to look at getting some sort of a signal from them on change of use. And if we're using them as a referral model, as referrals, which I think is a benefit to them, we may be able to embed that into an MOU. And we should think about, our capacity to do that. On item 6.4, this is consider allocating funding to pay for subsidies to residential licensed care facilities. I think this is a great opportunity, and it really ties into the other issue. We both want to make sure, because part of how we're dealing with making sure people don't become homeless is actually making sure they can stay in their current facilities. I think this is really one of the more cost-effective recommendations we have, so I want to move that we include that. And in addition to that, that we have a formal strategy for purchasing prior to a change of sale. Just a couple more comments, and one is, and I'm going to just, Sherry, if you don't mind, I'm curious about whether or not the assertive community treatment team contracts have yet been structured to apply to high need homeless populations.
I would have to get back to you on that, just reviewing the scope of work to make sure there's that level of specificity in there that you're requesting.
So to that end, I'll include that in the motion to make sure that our contracts are currently or structured, giving us that capacity. I know not every provider, Sherry, can do that. That's not a skill set they all have, but a number of them have said they want to do that. And so I'd like to look at those contracts. And so I'll make that a formal part of this motion. And I don't think we should wait till contract renewal. I think we should be asking who's ready to move now on that front. I think that would be very helpful. And then the other thing is that on that particular issue, I want to make sure that a part of those contracts includes the outreach needed for these really high need populations. So they're not just responding to those who are coming out of IMDs, but that they're really part of the continuum, both for people who may at some point need to be stepped up, but also have the capacity to be stepped down. I will just emphasize what I raised earlier about that need versus capacity, which I do think means that we need to count things, even if they're not totally within our sphere of operation, they are within our sphere of service. And if they're within our sphere of service, we need to know a little bit more about them. Let me just look real quick. Sherry, on the tracking issue, I actually think this is, I know this is something that we've discussed just in some meetings, but I think the whole system, we need to be able to essentially dashboard the system on a daily basis. And that's, I think that's really across the continuum of services. And what I would like to recommend is that as you move forward on the bed registry, that we're also moving forward on every contract we have, having a not a weekly, but a daily way that we can check in on where folks are. I recognize, Sherry, that I think you told us that one of the challenges for all of our services across the continuum is that all of them use different data systems. And so I'm wondering if we have worked with TSS to figure out a potential fix for that. And am I remembering the problem properly, Sherry? Or was it another issue on being able to track our, what was available in the system?
Multiple agencies have different electronic health records, and so that is certainly one of the issues. The other is, yes, I think capturing real time, the availability of capacity provided by service providers. Right now, we capture that on a weekly basis. and capture that at the call center level. But I certainly think we're looking to improve that process whereby we can have more updated capacity as it pertains to the different levels of care and programming more often than on a weekly basis. And so we're doing that through our call center. Providers provide that so that in order for the call center to be able to make those referrals, they have the available capacity by all of our providers.
So Sherry, I think I understood what you just said, but this is where I'm gonna, Dr. Smith, if I could just make a recommendation and get your thoughts on how to proceed on this, if you're available.
I'm here.
Oh, great, thank you. So Dr. Smith, one of the areas that we're having, I think we're having a challenge across the continuum is that this ability to have really daily information about bed availability by type. And I fear that one of the, the long-term idea that all of our computers are going to be talking to each other, I think it'll happen eventually, but I think it's a long way off. What I am interested in us doing is with each of our partner organizations having a daily tally that comes in and it will be somewhat challenging, I know, but a daily tally that doesn't require very sophisticated health records, but at least has a way of filling in kind of broad data daily, both in terms of utilization and wait lists as well. I think that's a shorter term project than just getting everybody on the same health record or similar health records. And my question is that something that you have thought about? And is this a need that you think, I mean, do you agree that this is a necessary project?
It would be important to have the information. It's not as easy as it sounds because the different agencies would have to input the information. We certainly have the ability to collect it and report it. But we can certainly try to see if we can get the agencies to report to us on a daily basis exactly what they have available. Yes.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that in as part of the actions from today and request that there be some discussion with our partners, our nonprofit partners, and then have that come back to this committee as a check-in item. What I'd like to do is have that discussion in December, if that's okay with the chair of the board. And really, Sherry, what I'm looking for is not the total solution, but to better understand the problem, and then if there's a fix to that problem that can actually be implemented with relative ease. And I recognize it is very complex, and relative, I hear the word I'm saying, but I also think that absent that, we are doing so much in the dark that I am concerned that that we don't want to try to have a perfect system when we might have one that's good enough until we get to perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Smith, for that feedback. And then let me just kind of share another issue, and this is relative to Section 8. The challenge, I guess what I'm really wanting to get your thoughts on is, and I know Curtis is working on this with behavioral health and BMC, and I know that these are conversations that we've been having too with you, Miguel. So my first question is, where are we with our investments relative to the IMD beds that were approved in the June budget, and whose shop is that in?
I can answer that if so. We have amended contracts to increase the number of beds. We had originally, I believe, said between 35 to 40 beds. We did end up increasing the number of beds to 25 beds. And the reason why we did the 25 beds was actually to increase a one-to-one supplemental rate. So one of the challenges associated with IMDs accepting our patients was the level of need, the high need. And so what we did was utilize some of the funding to do a one-to-one supplemental rate, which would further incentivize the IMDs to accept our patients. And so that is underway. I would have to confirm exactly when the contract was amended, but that was put in place within our system, and that does fall under our behavioral health contracting.
That's great news. Congratulations for moving so quickly. I appreciate that. Sherry, with that, did those beds, are they brand new beds, or did they come away from some other service?
Oh no, they're additional beds.
So we didn't lose any beds on a lower, that is amazing. And for that, are we going to be able to, are we capped at 25 because you're out of supplemental resources? Because you were saying this had to do with the one-to-one supplemental rate.
I believe so, but we could certainly look at other opportunities to increase that number if we feel there's a need to do that.
So here's my question, and because I can see the need on my walks, because I've seen folks who are badly in need of really high need care. And again, I would ask if we were really focusing on people who are homeless and really need support on the street, I think that number could be considerably higher than even the 40 that we're talking about. But from a utilization perspective, could you maybe just share how are the folks that I'm seeing out in the streets getting attached to this service?
Basically, we would be requiring that they undergo an assessment. And so there's an entire process around how that would happen. If they are deemed to need and or require that particular level of care, we would then make them eligible by referring them into a bed. But it's a fairly complex process that would probably take a little bit longer to describe, but ultimately there's a process of screening and assessment to be able to put them in there. Yeah. And I want to answer to your earlier question.
Can I come back to the earlier question? Just let me finish this one,
Sure,
and then we'll go right back. Thank you so much for, is it on this topic on the IMD beds?
It is. And
sorry, go ahead.
To update you that those contracts are coming to the board on September 28th.
Excellent. I'm so excited. Thank you.
Yeah.
Your team is just on the job. So Sherry, okay, so who is our nonprofit partner or for-profit partner? I don't know who that is, who is engaging the high need folks who are really deteriorating on the street right now? Like who is that nonprofit partner that's doing that engagement and then helping us get them into the assessment process?
There are several agencies that are providing those intensive services. I think Telecare, Community Solutions, Gardner, and other agencies that would be doing that.
So for those people that are on the street right now, could you let us know for the 25 new beds, where the folks came from and what nonprofits are doing that level of work? And the reason, Sherry, I'm asking about this specific type is that my recollection is that this was an extremely high need population, and that the outreach to this population was frankly more challenging than outreach to people who are seriously mentally ill, but who are perhaps easier to engage, and that we were going to need a very intensive engagement process to frankly see if we could get these folks into an assessment. So for example, in downtown San Jose, the nonprofits that are doing that work is Community Solutions, Gardner, and who else?
Telecare, yeah, mental health systems. We have some other agencies that are doing the more intensive. So when we refer to the intensive full service partnership, assertive community treatment or forensic assertive community treatment, those are the agencies that would be doing that more intensive outreach. And I think to your point about, flexibility and contracting to be able to do more of that outreach, we are looking at altering our contracts to be able to allow for that flexibility to do more of that intensive outreach. So I think, there had been comments and concerns about the way in which some of our agreements are structured. And so we've been working collaboratively with our nonprofit partners to be able to work on creating that flexibility such that they would be able to do more of that intensive outreach into the community to be able to engage, individuals that are more difficult to engage into treatment.
So if I chose one of those partners, telehealth or is it telehealth?
Telecare.
Oh, sorry, telecare, or community solutions or Gardner, and I were to if I see really high need people who are clearly in distress, I would call whom to have an outreach worker come to speak with them to then see if they are appropriate for this type of service. I would call.
Well, generally, we would probably ask you to, it just depends on the circumstance. If they're currently in crisis, at times we'll ask, folks to call our mobile crisis line, and a team can actually go out and assess the situation if it's an immediate crisis. Otherwise, if it's a general, service need, folks can be referred to our call center. So there are multiple ways.
Wait, Sherry. So these are people who can't use our call center. They're not healthy, right? Mm-hmm. So if as I see them, I can call the call center, and the call center is going to send somebody out from one of these agencies to go have an interaction with them and try to engage them in services.
Generally, if there's someone who's really in high need in the community, who may be struggling, we would probably most likely deploy our mobile crisis response team. And that way they could be out in the community evaluating them. We also have a in-home outreach team that is adjacent to our emergency psychiatric services, as well as within some of our partner agencies. So just to explain, there's different circumstances under which we would deploy a team into the community to assist. And it's
Sherry, I think where there's a really serious disconnect is between how people who are in crisis on the street get actually into one of these IMD beds. And the reason I'm pressing on this now is that I do know we have IHOT and ISFPS, and we have all these acronyms. And what I was under the impression that you were talking about initially is that we have in our contracts now partnerships with 4 agencies that can go through the community and have conversations with people and engage them. And your point that I understand very much about, like when someone's in deep crisis, frankly, people are still calling 911. And I know we're working on getting the information out about mobile crisis. In fact, I tried to do a ride-along with mobile crisis, and I was stunned at how hard it was. I've done ride-alongs with everything else in the world, and I think I need to talk to council about that. That was a little bit challenging, but because I want to understand how this works. So what I'm asking is, with these contractors, are they proactively now going through our community and helping folks? And if so, how do I see that reflected? And if not, are those the contracts that are in process? And if so, can we quantify what we're really asking people to do so that we can really knit these high need folks to a safe place more quickly?
Yes, so the contracting process is in place. I think to your point, what would probably be helpful is for us to probably come back with an off-agenda report or an updated report on just specifically what you're asking. How does a community member come through and request those supports? And we can certainly circle back on that. It's complicated to answer, I think, right in this venue, simply because there are different options given the scenario that's happening in the immediacy.
So Sherry, I think what the challenge is that if it's difficult to explain, and I read your report to me, and we want community engagement, I think part of what I'm really trying to understand is the complexity. And by the way, let me just say this, Sherry, I know there's a legal component to this. I recognize that, I do recognize and want to honor what you're saying there. I think what I'm saying is that we really do need to be able to explain this relatively clearly and quickly. And part of the reason I'm asking the question is that we have some very high need folks, because I live in downtown, that I see quite a lot. And I know that we have not been able to get them into services. But what I don't know is, are we actually in process of trying to do that? I just have no way of knowing that. So that's part of the question I'm trying to get answered. And I don't think it's an off agenda thing. I think it's a, let's be able to explain it to the public thing. And frankly, you guys send great reports. You have smart people, and they're sending me all the phone numbers, but I can't easily say to the public or to the people who live in the community that I live in, you want to help that person, here's the step to take. Or, you know, and that's really what I was trying to get to. But I appreciate that. It may make sense to think a little bit about how to have that conversation again with the board. One last thing I do want to ask, and again, Dr. Smith, these are two really, I think, that go under you. And I think it's actually connected to the discussion that Sherry and I were just having. I think one thing that we have to take a look at is this really very high need system sort of separately, because I do understand the point Sherry's raising, that the system is massive. There are all these different layers to it. So it may make sense to figure out a way to really talk about the folks that are really high need, like the folks who use EPS and who really do need the IMD beds, and maybe just move that off to a deeper discussion. But one thing I wanted to ask you about is your thoughts about whether or not we should be expanding our conservatorship services, not necessarily in SSA, but expanding them within behavioral health to address these really high need individuals who are sometimes homeless but have serious mental illness that I think are just much harder to serve and fit in a little bit less in SSA from my perspective, and a little more into behavioral health. Because right now we're using that for seniors.
I think the as I'm listening to the conversation, I think the issue really is the law that exists in California. It's called LPS, Lanterman-Petrus Short, which defines how mental illness can be treated and how individuals with mental illnesses must be treated in California. Includes conservatorship processes, as you're talking about, but also is very intensive about due process and patient autonomy. And so when I hear the question, what can I tell people to do when they see somebody on the street that they think is troubled mentally? It's really a legal issue as well as a behavioral health issue. There's no way with current state law that we can take people off of the street unless they are placed on a 5150 hold, which has to be done by a provider after analysis. And there's really only three criteria. They either have to be actively suicidal, actively homicidal, or gravely disabled, meaning unable to provide food, clothing, or shelter. And it's really hard to make those criteria. So when you ask about conservatorship, we do have a conservatorship system for LPS. The process is based on making the findings of one of those three findings, and it gives the particular patient the right to appeal or challenge those findings. If they appeal, it's really hard to hold them against their will. Now, then the basic question you ask is, should we be doing more LPS conservatorships? And the answer to that question, in my opinion, is yes. We wouldn't do it as part of behavioral health because the law would see that as a conflict of interest. But we could move LPS conservatorship to a different part of the organization and expand it. And that's the best I can do to explain the question here.
Yeah, no, that was very helpful, Dr. Smith. And what I would like to do is just encourage that as part of this action that we start to take a look at that. And I do really understand the point you raise about the legal system. I will tell you part of the reason, Dr. Smith, that I went to the engagement question is that when we talk to nonprofit leaders about this subject, one of the things that they asked us to consider, frankly, as part of when we were exploring AOT maybe 3 or 4 years ago, was this opportunity to get better resource to actually do the engagement, to build up enough trust and enough of a relationship so that, frankly, people wouldn't necessarily need to be conserved against their will. That was sort of the thinking at the time. And so one of the reasons I'm so interested in the contract change is that their vision was that they would be out on the street, not waiting for somebody to become, running into the street, but to start to get to know folks so that we were able to develop relationships with people before they were so severely just, decompensating, and or if they were severely decompensating, building enough trust to be able to have a trusting relationship to get them help. So the reason I'm so interested in this is that these contracts, the request from the nonprofits was, if you change the structure of these contracts, we can play a leadership role in reaching to doing this. More recently, some of the nonprofits felt like they had the skill set to deal with that really high need person. Others were looking at a high need person that maybe hadn't quite decompensated so much that they were too challenging to communicate with. So all that is to say that recognizing all of the challenges you just laid out, the continuum of care for that really high need person is the one I'm really trying to understand, because we're spending money on and starting to invest, which I really appreciate, into components of it, but I don't yet understand how the components work or if they're on the ground yet. And I should be seeing, for example, the utilization of those 25 beds. We guessed the 20, we were really kind of guessing at that 40. But do we need more? I mean, those are all questions that are difficult to answer until I understand exactly what we're doing on the ground.
Yeah, I think I understand your concern. I think we probably should ask the committee to schedule some time at the full board to go through it from nuts to bolts so that we can give you an algorithm of how it works and what we see as our strengths and weaknesses. Sherry and her team are required to keep track of the continuum of care and capacity of services of all different levels of need. So we could go through all of that for the full board and try to get it all in one place.
Thank you.
Because, I mean, I think your frustration, certainly my frustration after 30 years of practicing medicine, is that the way it's set up legally and structurally in California is fragmented, and has been fragmented since Ronald Reagan closed all the state hospitals. And that happened with the promise that there would be funding for the community-based organizations and the counties in order to actually take care of people. That funding never came. And so the people that you see on the street now, 30, 40 years ago, would have been people that had services surrounding them or were hospitalized in a state hospital. Now we hospitalize them in the gutter.
Yeah, you're completely right, Dr. Smith. And I think, even with all of the legal challenges, some of them, by the way, many of them put in place because we were, as human beings, not appropriately using them. I think the challenge we have now is the pendulum swung so far in the other direction that people are really just suffering on the street and dying, really. And but I really appreciate the idea of just bringing it back to the full board. I think that's very smart. I do love the idea of you taking a look at how we can expand LPS, because I think that that's actually a legal tool we know how to use, and one that really should give us more opportunity to support high need people. And I also appreciate the point. I hadn't really thought about the conflict of interest with behavioral health. So thank you for pointing that out. I just wouldn't have, that just didn't occur to me. And I have some other issues relative to EPS, but I think if we could, I'm happy to make a motion to package the agreements that we have and to move and receive the report for all of the areas where there were agreement and where there were areas that were asked by the board or raised by Supervisor Lee. I think our approaches were very much in line. I think we were just kind of asking these questions from different perspectives. I'm happy to make that a motion. And Sherry, I really do want to say thank you for moving on those 25 beds so quickly. And I'm looking forward to seeing how we get to that 40 and then what that engagement looks like. So thank you, and thank your team.
I see you have a motion, and I'll go ahead and second it. And actually, I still have to open up the public hearing. I see there are 2 hands. Oh, 3 hands now. So I'll go ahead and give each 3 minutes. Go ahead.
One moment, please, while we get the timer ready.
Thank you.
Did you say 3 minutes, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Okay. Just give us a second to reset the timer.
Sure. Just a note to the speakers. I gave 3 minutes, but certainly if you could complete it in sooner, less than 3 minutes, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Next speaker is Lisa Kopf Ginsburg. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Good afternoon. I'm Lisa Kopf Ginsburg with the Behavioral Health Contractors Association. As this is also being heard at HHC, I'll focus my remarks today on sections 6 and 7. As the audit notes, the loss of both licensed and unlicensed residential facilities over the past few years continues to build. We support any efforts to add to the supply of residences. We also place great urgency on a more coordinated approach to keeping track of all available resources. Given the disparate nature of these residences, attaining a database of active capacity will be challenging, but an up-to-date resource of all operating facilities would be a major improvement and allow case managers to better assist clients with finding placement. I'd also like to speak to item 7, as the quality of board and care facilities represents the values of our county. And right now, there has not been sufficient attention to addressing this. The original proposal in the 3-year MHSA plan included a component creating a voluntary membership organization for owners and operators of board and care facilities. This approach, modeled after another county, uses the carrot versus the stick approach to partner and support owners in improving the quality of their residences. This component was not included in the current innovations project, and we believe we need to move forward with this approach concurrently, if it does not hinge on findings from the innovations project and is badly needed. And I'd also just like to mention that in regard to section 9 and the outcome measures for contracts, we agree that the data collection will hopefully improve considerably with the new electronic health record process. But I just want to mention that providers look forward to engaging together with the department to partner to identify a path to moving towards outcome basis. We look forward to partnering in these and all efforts to strengthen our public mental health system. Thank you.
Next speaker is Richard Scott. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to talk about the issues that Cindy Chavez has brought up. Just to tell you a little about myself, I've licensed drug programs in Florida. I licensed residential care homes in San Jose, for the state. I was emergency room social worker at Valley Medical Center, and I retired as the only supervisor of the Santa Clara County Mental Health Homeless Team. I find the discussion of statistics is very important, but I find that every time we have a discussion of this problem, we're always talking about how to count. We focused on counting as opposed to providing services. When we had the mental health homeless team, we had 1 psychiatrist and 6 workers, and everybody had a caseload of at least 60. And we followed them around and made sure that they got the services they need. I see case management today in this county is handing out pieces of paper. In terms of the LPS problem, you know, our diagnoses today seem to depend on whether there's a bed. I think you can do the diagnosis and consider someone gravely disabled without having a bed. It certainly would help if we stopped chasing homeless people around the street and we allowed them to be in encampments where we could find them. But even in spite of that, if you hang out in certain areas, you'll know, I'm sure that Cindy Chavez knows the homeless mentally ill people in our county that are in her area. It is absolutely atrocious that we see people walking down the middle of the street, waving their hands, fighting street lights and fighting flagpoles, shadow boxing, and we don't consider them gravely disabled. I'm amazed, you know, the police officers will not pick these people up anymore because, as the sergeant said to me, I've been doing this for 25 years and I know they're not going to take them. Well, we used to take them and we can service them. It's a question of will. Often the mobile mental health team, you call them, they say things like, well, he's Bill Smith, he's at baseline. Yeah, well, Ted Bundy was at baseline too when they called, and look what he did. So we've got to start paying attention to what Cindy Chavez is talking about. We can do that. Our team had 6 people on it, a psychiatrist and 6 workers. And, you know, we were responsible for making sure that the right things happen to those people. I do not see that happening today. Thank you very much.
Speaker is Uday Kapoor. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you. Actually, I was very pleasantly surprised that Sherry mentioned that they're tracking beds on a daily basis. So actually one of the findings of the audit was that there isn't a process to track beds. And I have been together with Elisa, and I support what Elisa said. Elisa and David Mineta, we've been working with Margaret to track beds, to come up with a process of spreadsheets of where we are, and we're finding it very difficult to do that. And then we had a meeting where Keely and Margaret and I talked about this process, and Margaret did say that, yeah, there isn't a process, and they're working on one. So he had some very positive suggestions, and I would recommend that I won't mention that here, but I think we will take his help, and I think we should do that. So this is, of course, only at the very basic level, not just having the addresses of facilities, but to find out what level of care there exists in each facility, how many beds at what level of care, because we need to match that to our needs. And unless we know exactly where we are right now, how will we ever know where we need to go? Because this is something that is really missing. And I've talked about it in various panels. And I think this is now we are only talking about the licensed or contracted beds. And there are many more that are unlicensed or independent living facilities that don't have contracts or are business that are family run. We need to track those too. And then the quality of those places. That's something that the Independent Living Empowerment Project is supposed to address, that we work very hard with Sherry to bring about. So I think what we need to do is, Dr. Smith, to have Key and Margaret and I and other folks, David Mineta, to work out a process, to figure out where we are right now. How do we get there? How do we create a process where we can integrate all of the databases, and really know where we are and keep it current, keep it dynamic, and so that we can then go to the next step of finding the level of care that we need to match to the needs that are out there. Thank you very much.
That concludes our requests to speak.
So we have a.
Yes, no, go ahead, Supervisor Chavez, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say, I know we did a motion in a second already. I was saying that out loud. We did, right?
Yes, we just did,
Okay, thank
right, before the public hearing. Thank you. So we, I think based on public comments as well, I think we're reiterating many of the similar points. And first of all, Supervisor Chavez, thanks for those very good questions and how important it is for us to keep track of these capacity, the beds, and the ability to have that, on real-time information so that we know that's being made available to our providers so that people could be sent to the right places with the right level of care. So thanks, and we'll definitely have to come back with a lot of these questions, and I think Sherry took good notes what we need. Seeing no more public hearing, I would go ahead and close the public hearing and go ahead and let's go take a vote.
Vice Chairperson Chavez,
Yes.
Chairperson Lee.
Yes, as well.
Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Moving to the next item, I have item number 4, which is regarding the management audit of the Sheriff's Custody Bureau. And to present this items, I believe is also Sheriff Soloff and also the staff of Sheriff Office, I believe Under Sheriff Bender's here, correct?
That's correct, Supervisor. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Under Sheriff Ken Bender here. I'm here with Assistant Sheriff, newly promoted, David Sepulveda, Captain Tom Duran. The Sheriff is actually traveling down south to the California Peace Officers Association. There's a ceremony at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning for 2 of our deputies who responded to the tragic VTA active shooter incident. So that's why she's not here. We are here to answer any questions after Cheryl or Harvey Rose's presentations.
Great, thank you. Under Sheriff. Cheryl, do you have anything you would like to add on this item, please?
Would you like us to provide you with a presentation, a brief presentation, or would you like to just answer questions?
Sure, I think a brief presentation will be good for the public to know what the general issues is about. Go ahead, please.
Sure. And I have Julian Metcalf to present today.
Good afternoon, supervisors. I'm Julian Metcalf with the Management Audit Division. We completed the audit effectively in May 2018 and published the audit in February 2021. It contains 10 findings and 48 recommendations. At the time it was prepared, the Sheriff's response to the audit agreed with 14 recommendations, partially agreed with 10, disagreed with 16, and provided no input for 8. Since then, I believe the Sheriff's Office has uploaded as a supplemental to the agenda packet some different responses. And if my numbers are correct, they now agree with 32, partially agree with 5, disagree with 6, and have no response for 5. Custody Health Services Administration disagrees with 1 recommendation that was recommended to the Sheriff's Office regarding the memorandum of understanding between both parties. And they also commented on 2 other recommendations that weren't directed to them. Oakland provided a memo as well pertaining to a recommendation in section 2, and the memo is attached to this legislative item. And then it's also worth noting that due to the consent decrees, some of the recommendations we have made may require approval by class counsel or review by federal courts prior to the implementation if approved by the board. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. And let me see, I'll ask Supervisor Chavez, would you have any questions on this item, please?
Well, there are a couple of ways we could proceed, and one of them is to take the items in order and get through as many of them as we can today. And then the other would be to take those that where there's disagreement first or no response. But given that even on the agree, there's some partially agree, it might be worth just kind of going through them one by one. What's your preference, Chair?
I think going one by one is fine. I think it's easier to follow, and we could move certainly fast on the agree ones. But let's go through them by one. I'm okay with that, certainly. Yeah, go ahead. So
okay, so I'm going to take 1.1.
Sure.
And on 1.1, the disagreement. So this is to require the Custody Bureau work with the Internal Affairs County Council, the Employment ESA, and affected labor unions to develop and implement a policy that would ensure that officers accused of serious offenses such as assaults on inmates are immediately placed on paid leave or assigned to duties that do not involve inmate contact pending investigation. Such assignment should be triggered when allegations are brought to the attention of custody, legal, or medical personnel. And there's a disagree. All internal investigations are judged on a case-by-case basis in conjunction with county council. Factors that are considered include the nature of the allegation, the involved employer's prior conduct, the potential validity of the complaint. Cursory review is often conducted. As an example, of the circumstances or incidents are preserved on video, that would be reviewed. I think on this one, my recommendation would be that the sheriff's office conduct research on best practices. And let me just say this to Under Sheriff Bender, and congratulations, Under Deputy. What's your new title? I'm sorry.
Assistant Sheriff.
Assistant Sheriff. I apologize. I almost said I apologize, Captain Sepulveda, but I meant got it, Under Sheriff. Okay. But on this one, I think that it is a best. This to me is considered, in my mind, a best practice to make sure that somebody is put on paid administrative leave or assigned to another duty, even if that's for a short period of time. If it's done in a way that's a typical standard operating procedure instead of something that is deemed punitive. And so I think that it makes a lot of sense to work with these to actually investigate this a little further. And I don't understand exactly why we wouldn't want to take a look at what the best practices are.
Sure. So first, let me just say that we definitely agree with this in concept. And the reason I think our offices at A disagree is because anyone can make a complaint, and it could be an allegation, it could be frivolous, it could not be. And so that's the only reason why we don't want to cement into practice that when these complaints come through, someone automatically has to be put on to paid admin leave. In actuality, what's happening with our practices is when these complaints come through, we take a look at each and every one. We work with county council on them and labor relations as well. And for any allegation that appears to have merit on the surface of it, then those cases, we immediately put them on admin leave. So we're doing the practice for those cases where it's clear that there is the potential violation occurred. And so we just want to make sure that there's some sort of evidence. And if they're at least on the face of it, whether it's video, whatever type of evidence it could be. And at that point, they would be placed on admin leave while the due process is carried out. So I think the sheriff's office agrees in concept. It's just that we want to ensure that there's some evidence and due process involved.
I think that I think one of the problems is when we use terms like case by case versus our policy is X, Y, and Z, and the steps that are taken are so clearly laid out. And especially because we want our employees to know, we want the public to know. And I think that, and we're not talking about small complaints here, we're talking about serious allegations of assault or something that is in that level. So I think on this one, I would recommend that you come back with a policy. If we have a strong practice now, which is what I think you're saying, I'd want to see that the practice is reflected in policy. Is there any concern that you have about that?
No, we'll take a look at it, Supervisor. I think that's a great suggestion.
Thank you. Chair Lee, is that acceptable to you?
Yeah, and I think it is. And actually, I do have a question real quick. On the sheriff, on the issue regarding the late, the leave will not be given until the formal investigation is complete. How long does it take for that to actually complete? Generally speaking, when you talk about formal investigation, we talk about weeks or days, or we talk about months?
Well, it depends on what the allegation is. The Peace Officer Bill of Rights requires that discipline be meted out within a year of the administration becoming aware of it. Obviously, we don't like investigations to take that long. It just depends on, we have a small staff of internal affairs investigators that is constantly looking into allegations. So we do them as timely as we can, but generally it's going to be at least a few months. And if there's any type of criminal nexus to the allegation, then we have to look at, we want to ensure that an administrative investigation doesn't interfere with the criminal investigation. So we hold those investigations in order to not get in the way of the criminal. So those ones can take longer.
Right. So now let me back up one step. So if there's a discharge of weapon or somebody is being shot at, I think those situations, the officer generally get put on the leave much sooner. Am I correct?
Yes, for officer-involved shootings, there's always a standard administrative leave process for a deputy involved in that. And yeah, there's a dual component to that. It gives time for the agency to look at the initial underlying facts and also a chance to ensure the mental health of a deputy involved in something like that before we bring them back into service with the public.
Right. And so those are actually pretty much immediate, right? After the incident takes place, when Dusty comes on board, the officer might be put on leave practically within 24 hours.
Correct. And in terms of officer-involved shootings, fortunately, we don't have that many of them. So it is a little easier than if there's an allegation regarding force. We could get those types of allegations a lot more often. And if we were to put all of our staff off just immediately without there being some sort of evidence or video to back it up, at that point, it could just compound our operational issues within the facility. So that's why we look at each case by case. But I think we can come up with a policy that at least states what we're looking at so that everyone understands what the rules are and what the process is going to be.
Right, exactly. I think that the clarity of it would be important. Like, you certainly have a policy regarding, discharge of firearms, and those are cases where, so if we have other type of use of force, I think there might be ways that we could do it, because based on the report I'm reading, it says IA takes about 4 weeks to be referred. And then at the end of the day, it takes an average like close to 7 or 8 months, right, to conduct the investigation. So if clearly there's a problem with the officer complaining, if they were actually merited, having somebody still serve a few, half a year after that incident, I think that certainly is an issue. So if you could help clarify that, it's going to be really helpful. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. That's 1.1. Is we done 1.1, Supervisor Chavez? Oops, you're muted. I'm sorry.
I'm just going to restate that for 1.1. You're asking for a policy to come back that is reflective of practice within 3 months.
Great. All right. Thank you. All right. Now, 1.2, we have a partial agree. Do you want to go through that as well?
Yes, and I think on this one, I would recommend the same thing, which is that we define a policy that is clear and reflective of practice, and in particularly addressing when it is more appropriate that an action is handled at the division level. I just think that needs to be cleared up, and looking at another 3-month time frame for that.
Okay.
Under Sheriff Bender, is that clear?
That sounds great, Supervisor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. 1.3 and 1.4 both agree. do you have any comments on that? Or can we keep moving?
The only comments I would make on both of those items is that at the earliest opportunity is that the sheriff's office make materials available to the auditor that verify that they've been completed.
Okay. All right, let's moving to 2.1. We have a disagree regarding restructure of the grievance unit, such that the current senior management analyst acts as the head of the unit. Senior management analyst should receive additional training on law enforcement, legal issues, and data confidentiality rules to facilitate the transition into this supervisory role. In the new capacity, it would continue to report to the correctional captain, but also duly send any issues and analyses to the new oversight function, the Office of Correction and Law Enforcement Monitoring. And the undersheriff has the sheriff response was disagreed. The job specification for senior management analyst is not generally supervisory. Specification thus state, quote, may provide direct supervision over assigned professional, technical, and office support staff, unquote. This classification of employee cannot supervise an entire unit. Because of the chain of command structure, a lieutenant is needed to effectuate immediate and system-wide changes. And yes, Supervisor Chavez, your question on this one? Mm-hmm.
Yes, for staff, I feel like there is something here I don't understand in terms of the approach that the staff, I mean the auditor is making and the point that you're trying to make. Could you describe the implications, I'm sorry, of the chain of command structure as you describe in the disagree column?
Good afternoon, supervisors, Assistant Sheriff Sepulveda. So generally, the lieutenant in charge of the grievances unit is also the effective liaison to not only the two facilities, but all the business units. And so what Lieutenant Nguyen's role is now is he actually looks at the trends, looks at the issues and concerns, and makes directions to the custody staff in the business units or the facilities in order to rectify the problems. So it's more of a, it gives him an ability to affect immediate change system-wide by being able to give directives out from his, reviews of either the grievances, responses, or the trend reviews. And so he also acts obviously as a liaison with the administrations of the facilities and the business units. So it's more effective to have a middle management level person that can give directions to the staff and have them take those directions. And what I mean by that is it's immediate. So he'll pick up the phone and make a call and talk to a supervisor at a facility or another lieutenant and say, here's what's going on. We need you guys to fix this immediately, or even talk to staffs.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. So I'll just add that, we've got the chain of command paramilitary structure here at the Sheriff's Office, like any other law enforcement organization. And really, if this position would need to be someone of rank to be able to effectuate the change, as opposed to putting a civilian person in there and then asking them to manage sworn staff. It would be better for us to put someone of rank to be able to do that and to have it actually be more effective and efficient.
So, Chair Lee, on 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3, for me, one of the challenges is that they're all looking at a grievance procedure, frankly, that was part of the Blue Ribbon Commission, also gave feedback on the grievance procedures, as you recall. And for me, when I look at 2.1, 2.2, I understand that's a budgetary issue. And that one, I think is, could be addressed after this kind of bigger issue is addressed, which is we have kind of gone round about the very best way to assess the grievance process. And then there are two challenges I see with these three items. One is that the initial findings were available in May of 2018. This is a long time from then. Two is that at that time we didn't have OCLEM in place, and so anyway, so let me just put a pin in that for a minute. And three is that there's a system, and this takes pieces of the system and sort of examines them instead of examining the whole process again. And so I think there are like a number of directions that this could go. One is obviously we can pick a side on any of these topics. The other, though, is to ask the staff to work with OCLEM and frankly even a group of folks who, inmates and others who've been affected by the grievance process, to actually take a look at where we are in the grievance process internally to the organization to date. And Under Sheriff, the reason I'm mentioning this is that I know that when the Blue Ribbon Commission happened, we put some changes in place right away. I know you've been doing a lot of work to make sure that this is mechanized. And I think the point you're raising about being able to address trends had to do with being able to now look at data in more complete forms and then being able to take action on them. I think the challenge with the current structure is that it's unclear as to from my perspective, as to whether or not the grievance procedure has been smoothed out enough now that we have more data and now that we have this leadership, and whether or not the lack of staffing is impacting both of these other two areas. Chair Lee, one of the things I would be thinking about is asking the staff, giving them, again, a very tight timeline, like maybe 6 months, to both communicate with OCLEM and those that are in custody to do an overall assessment of the grievance procedure. And it might also be timely with your new leadership role, I almost said Captain, Assistant Sheriff Sepulveda, because I know that this is an area you'd worked really hard on, but now you're in a different position to sort of affect change. So that would be my thinking.
Yeah, I think we can definitely do that. We will be more than happy to do that.
Supervisor Lee?
Yes, no, I certainly agree with the approach as well. So if the sheriff's office was able to carry out, I think that would be great. All right, so we covered 2.1 to 2.4. 2.5.
Well, on the 2.4, I think there was an agree, so we want to support implementation on that.
Right, except with OCLEM. 2.5, 2.6 are both agree. No more comments, right? Okay, then roll to 3.1. 3.1 is revised its use policy for facility cameras to include specific guidelines on when audio may be switched off for these devices for legal or privacy purposes. So priority 1. The sheriff's response was to disagree that the system is not set up to turn recordings on and off. Facility cameras are automatically set to record 24/7. It wouldn't be practical or feasible to try to have staff monitor all 1422 cameras in real time or in order to cut the volume in specific situations. The purpose of footage is to provide evidence in criminal, administrative, and civil investigations for litigation. Redactions can be made to video, including audio, if protectable information is captured. Audio is turned off in interview rooms already. Also, cameras are not set up in areas where privacy is expected, such as restrooms, lactation rooms, etc. Okay, and that's on disagree. You have any comments, Supervisor Chavez?
I actually think that the sheriff's response is one I agree with. I'm a little perplexed by the recommendation, and I wondered if the auditor staff could just explain or give feedback to the sheriff's response.
Yes, absolutely. I suspect what's happened too is at the time we were looking at a different camera system. This was back in 2018. and the volume is different. They've installed more cameras since then, so it may not be reflective of the current environment. I'm going through my notes here, and I want to make sure that I think the policy is the area where we saw the most issue, where it wasn't clear about how this was managed and articulated in policy. So I think the next section, 3.2, where it talks about a revision to the policy for body-worn cameras, I think probably relates better as it does going back to the surveillance cameras, though it's not mentioned in 3.2. I think clarity on the policy about this would probably solve this issue.
So I would recommend Supervisor Lee that that we accept the disagree, but ask for the policy to come back through
Exactly.
committee and have that be verified by the auditors. And on a timeline for that, I know that we have the surveillance policy may actually impact how you draft this policy. So I would ask that the staff have a 6-month turnaround, because the surveillance policy has some very specific questions staff needs to be able to respond to. And as a matter of fact, Under Sheriff, I assume that before these all got placed, did these have to go through the surveillance policy already?
No, but well, this is what's done separately, but I would just advise that our policy, our surveillance policy did take all of these things into account when we drafted them. And I believe that our policies speak to the issues that are brought up in some of these various bullet points as we get to them.
Yeah, and so I would just suggest that the policy be pulled out, shared with the auditor, let the auditor verify it. And then the other thing, and I appreciate you reminding me that these were super early in that process. And what I would caution for you guys is to review those policies to see if there are any gaps in the policy in terms of clarity or, yeah, really. And then once you feel confident about that, share those with the auditor so the auditor can verify that that's been resolved.
Okay.
And that would be for 3.1, Supervisor Lee.
Great, thank you. How about 3.2, since we talked about the body-worn camera as well?
Yeah, this is another one. Perhaps the auditor staff, if you wouldn't mind, just explain, if you want to just update us on this item as well.
Yes, I suspect this is a similar situation. At the time of our audit in the fieldwork in 2017 and 2018, the body-worn cameras were being implemented, and we observed training sessions, and this was really driven from some of the gaps we saw at that time. It's very possible it could be a different environment now, and the policies could address this.
Got it. What I would recommend is for both item 3.2 and 3.3 that the Sheriff's Department just verify that these have both been addressed already and share those verifications with the auditor. If Supervisor Lee, if you're comfortable with that.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. And Under Sheriff?
Okay, we'll do that, Supervisor.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and then for 3.4, we have a partially agree regarding the early intervention system to identify the body-worn camera users who repeatedly fail to use the technology according to the use policy. During the incident review, supervisor should record each time a deputy's BWC body-worn camera footage did not comply with the use policy and review the frequency of these occurrences for the direct reports every month. And this was a partially agreed. Okay.
Yeah, and on this item, Supervisor Lee, I would ask the Undersheriff if you could respond to the partially agree issue, and yes, if you wouldn't mind just sharing some thoughts on this item, and then I do have a question.
Sure. So you just give me just a second to catch up. I was taking notes.
Oh, sorry.
We agree in concept, it's just.
Okay, yeah, so the body-worn camera policy was developed with county council, and we had to do meet and confers with the unions, and we ended up coming up with a robust policy supervision. was one of the things that was very important to administration. We wanted to make sure that deputies were using their body-worn cameras when they were supposed to. And we will put into the policy itself that the frontline supervisors on at least a monthly basis would be doing random audit reviews of the deputies that work for them to ensure that they were turning on their body-worn cameras and using them consistently with the way the policy required. So we believe that we've got the system in place to make sure that, and really now, a couple of years later, it really is second nature for our deputies to be using the body-worn cameras. And it's been quite a while since we've come across a blatant violation. We do have a current case right now that's in the disciplinary process for that. But by and large, the most part, what we're doing is if our direct line supervisors see any issues, then we're beginning the corrective action process right there. So we think that this really is not an issue that we need to reinvent the wheel with.
So on this one, what I would recommend again is that the progressive discipline matrix is shared with the auditors, because I do think if that's been negotiated already and that's really clear, that should just be shared with them. And then I think that really does address that issue. And it's sort of reflected in 33.5, interestingly, that the nature of that implementation. And on 3.5, I would just recommend, in fact, for all of these, to get the verification information to the auditor as quickly as possible, so all of these can be, kind of addressed. Thank you.
Okay, and 3.5 is an agree. Any other issues on that?
I just recommended that the verification for that be
Right.
Submitted as quickly as possible.
Okay, great. And then 3.6 and 3.7 and 3.8, these are all agree. Any more issues on that?
Only that we have under Sheriff, what I would recommend is that we have a 3-month trigger for everything that agrees for verification. Just because the audit is so old, I think we should be able to get them the data that it closes these pieces down. Unless that's difficult for any one of them, just let us know.
Yeah, I'll set up a meeting with Julian and we'll go over all of these items and show what we've done.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Moving to item number 4, which is regarding staffing. Right now, the sheriff actually has no response on item number 4.1 to 4.3. Do you have any questions you want to discuss, Supervisor Chavez, on this?
I would, on these, I would actually ask that we hold these until we have the staffing discussion, because I think this is kind of all wrapped up, and want to thank the auditor's office for pointing these out, because we can use this as a framework for that discussion, and see if Sheriff Bender, if you're comfortable with us holding those off until our discussion around the staffing issues.
Yes, ma'am. That sounds great.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and table for the section 4. Section 5 is relating to rehabilitation of offenders to lower custody costs. Both items are agree. Any more comments on that?
No, I think these make sense. Again, I think we're going to end up touching on them a little bit at a later time, but I'm comfortable with all of the 4.4, 4.5. I mean, I'm sorry, yeah, 4.6.
5.1, 5.2.
And all the way actually to 4.8. Again, these all just need to be verified, so that's great.
Right. All right, so for 5.1, 5.2, let's talk about the lower the custody cost. Both are agreement, no issues, right?
These, yes, these items though, I would say are really going to, in some ways, be tied to the staffing studies as well.
Right.
So I think we don't need to keep them up anymore. Yeah.
Great. Okay, all right. Item 6.1 to 6.4 regarding custody bureau. Any issues? These are all agreed.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to ask Sheriff Bender on 6.1 through actually 6.2, 6.3, and again, this might have to do a little bit with time, and 6.4 is that I do think that we want to make sure that the JFA Institute can do annual audits to verify that we're using the intended, that we're using the appropriate recommendations for improvement, and that we can see those improvements. And what I don't know is, did that audit already occur for all of these that verified these tools, the classification tool?
Okay. Has the audit occurred? Captain Duran directly oversees our classification.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, in regards to any types of audits, right now we are working with the prison law office, and we work with county council. We share information regarding everything related to the consent decree, which includes making sure that we are housing individuals in the least restrictive setting, making sure that we are conducting our reviews. So yeah, we are sharing the information with the prison law office and with county council.
So there was an institute that was assisting us with the classification tool initially. I think it was JFA, and I'll ask my staff if that's not right. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Okay, and what I wanted to do is recommend that we have them take a look at it, because now you've been operating under this new system for almost 3.5 years, right?
Correct. Since
So, yeah, I'd like to request that we add in the Institute to conduct an audit of the classification tool, and just to give us feedback, and also at that time to determine whether or not we need an annual audit or a biannual audit, to just take a look and see how the tool is working, if that's okay with the Supervisor Lee and Sheriff Bender. Does that sound agreeable?
That does sound doable. My only concern is if we're already being audited under the consent decrees, with the federal consent decrees, it feels like it's duplicating the work.
Why don't we do this? Let's leave the recommendation in there, because I think they have a slightly different focus. All that said, let's then ask if we can get some feedback from county council to see if that's a duplication, because I think they could be a third party that would help us understand that. And you know what? You guys recommend the audit by JFA at the next phase anyway, so maybe take a look at that relative to scope with council. Thank you.
Okay. That's all for 6, right? So let's go to item number 7, the LGBTQI policy. 7.1, 7.2, 7.3 all agree. 7.4 is a partial agree, and 7.5 is agree. 7.6 no response. Supervisor Chavez, which one you want to go up into?
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to just say that for item 7.1, for all the 7s actually, that I want to ask that Sheriff Bender, that there be a formal sit down with the Office of LGBTQ Affairs to review the work being done in 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, 7.4, and 7.5, and that on item 7.4, that item 7.4 and item 7.5 have a report back on well, actually 7.5, that we have a report back on progress in the next within the next 3 months.
Yes, we can absolutely do that.
Great, thank you. And then same with 7.6. I would just say I think it would be really important to work with the Office of LGBTQ Affairs.
Yes, absolutely. And just want to clarify for the FUSC board that the items, there may be one that slipped through, but at least all, except for, I believe all of the no response items from our office are actually directed from the audit firm to another department. So for example, 7.6 The recommendation is to the Office of LGBTQI Affairs. That's why we didn't have a response in that one. And that was
Thank you.
the earlier items as well.
And on item 7.6, I know that my office reached out to that office to Maribel, and she was in agreement with item 7.6 and item 7.1 as well. And so I think that the reason I kind of scooped them all up is I also thought it was just a good idea to engage them.
Sounds great.
And just so you know, supervisors, we do meet with them once a month. Our PREA unit and our deputy assigned to those areas, we do meet with them via Teams on a monthly basis to review any issues or concerns that they may have, or any issues or concerns that they may have heard of via request forms or grievances. And at the same time, we share up-to-date information with them regarding our in-custody numbers. So we do have
That's really helpful. Yeah, thank you. I think what happened here was that they weren't engaged on the audit per se, so they hadn't seen it. So I do appreciate that you're meeting with them, and I think that's really good. And as a matter of fact, if you could put this into your meeting, you know, one of your next couple of meetings, I think would be ideal. So thank you for letting me know that.
Okay. I have a question actually on 7.1 real quick. On the Sheriff Bender, the question is that there is concern over the classification tool that might have overlooked the transgender inmates, resulting in direct failure to address their unique needs until the needs has been identified. Can you elaborate a little bit more about the tool and how we might be able to fix that?
So we actually did sit down with a couple stakeholders a few months ago regarding the tool itself, and we explained and walked individuals that participated in the meeting from the Office of the LGBTQI Affairs and also County Council, and we did have, I believe, Kylie also sat in on the meeting as well. And what we did is we explained the process, and that we gave every individual that we met with the opportunity to select the type of housing based on the statement of preference that they filled out for us. We explained the process is a continual process, that at any time they can reach out to classification and request a change in the type of housing or their statement of preference, and that we do take into consideration all the same things that we do for the rest of our population, to include programming opportunities, out of cell time, access to least restrictive housing. So we did meet with them and we did share everything, and once we shared the information, they had a better understanding of the process, and it showed that we were allowing all individuals to kind of have access to the same programs and all opportunities within our facilities.
And Supervisor Lee, the reason I wanted a deeper dive with Maribel with the Office of LGBTQ Affairs is that I thought these were areas where they may be able to use focus groups to actually dive in and be able to give some feedback.
Right. Certainly agree. Thank you. Any more items on 7? Okay. If not, let's move to 8, which is custody health. On the first one, there's actually both of these actually are both disagree on 8.1, 8.2.
I think the problem here is that these are custody healths and not necessarily custody. I see Dr. Day is with us if you want to ask her thoughts.
Sure. So yeah, Dr. Day, on 8.1, it's about working on custody health, and County Council update the memorandum understanding include 1, minimum performance standard, 2, quarterly reporting requirements, and 3, a provision to annual review, update and recertify the agreement to ensure it remains actively managed. The update should comport to any legal agreements that may be applicable. This was responded saying that the Sheriff's Office does not provide the supervisory function of the custody health staff and doesn't have the expertise to determine the quality and cost of these services. On 8.2 is regarding the using a simple spreadsheet-based timesheet to replace a paper-based timesheet with regular performance reporting to custody bureau. Again, this is something the Sheriff's Office does not have expertise to do. Dr. Day, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yes, hi. On those two items, just wanted to quickly check in with you. Are these things that you will be able to do instead of the sheriff's side?
As supervisor, we do believe that we should be able to take that on, and we should be able to provide that under the custody health services umbrella. And then, of course, work in collaboration with the sheriff's department and partner on the different areas. But that we believe is under the authority of custody health services.
Okay, very good.
So on these, I would just recommend a 90-day report back through the auditor on both items.
Very good.
8.1 and 8.2. Thank you so much, Dr. Day.
Certainly.
Thank you. All right, then on item number 9, expanding.
On 8.3, this is directed to us, and I would say we should answer that with a yes.
Okay.
And this just asks for annual reports.
For the board, okay.
Yeah.
Right, thank you. All right, and then item 9 is expanding inmate programs. 9.1 and 9.2 are both agree. Anything to add, Supervisor Travis?
On this item, what I wanted to ask the undersheriff, and maybe I can't remember who this was under, but I remember us getting, at least it felt like an annual report that just listed programming. It didn't list utilization, but it did list programs. And I would like to see us get an annual report of programming and utilization. And is there an available report that could come to this committee within the next 3 months that just says, here are all the programs we have by, frankly, by classification utilization as well as location within the facility and with the gender breakdown?
Sure, we do share the information. We have shared it with PSJC in the past, and we do have a presentation coming up regarding programs that we have implemented. So that's something we can do.
That'd be great. And then I would just, again, verify this with the auditor that it's broken down in this particular way, because we get the question from the community both ways, which is by floor and by where people are housed. So that would be really helpful. Thank you.
I don't have any questions on 9192. Moving to last item would be section 10 on regarding restrictive housing. 10.1 to 10.4 is all agree. 10.5 is actually a partially agree. So Supervisor Chavez, what do you have on this one?
Yeah, so this one, I'm very interested in, I guess my question is how do you track this now?
This is Inmate.
Assistant Sheriff Sepulveda is going to answer this.
So right now we're doing we do most of our tracking manually, obviously. It's a paper-based system, but all inmate discipline matters, whether it be an infraction or custody input, is documented, reviewed by a supervisor, and then the classification unit receives a copy of those reports and analyzes them to determine whether or not there's a need for movement or not. And then with regard to actually imposing discipline, if it's a major infraction issue, the hearing officer will examine all the evidence presented, give the inmate an opportunity to say their part, and then make a determination on the egregiousness of the violation, if it's sustained, and taking a look at their history. So if they're a repetitive offender, let's say they've had 10 infractions and the low-level progressive type discipline is not working, they might increase that discipline to see if that works. So we track it by every hearing. We're required, the hearing officer is required to report on everything that happens in the hearing and their findings and their reasons for the findings. That is all documented and maintained in the file, and then classification will get a copy of the final outcome. So that's the best way we can do it, since we don't have a JMS. We don't have an ability to track the metrics that we're interested in tracking, obviously, but we do track and monitor the reports manually.
What is the ETA for the JMS system? I might not be asking the right people, but who should I, did you know the answer to that?
So yeah, I'm still working on that project as well.
Sorry.
So, we're hoping that we're able to get the RFP out early next month. We're still working on wrapping that up to get it released. So if all goes well, we're still looking at about 2.5 years.
I don't, this one befuddles me. I mean, what I would suggest is that two things. One, if it's 2.5 years, I mean, I think we've been talking about this since before I got here. So this goes under the category of, and I know we need it, right? So what I would recommend is that we also take a look at whether or not it's possible for us to get you some interim support to help you be able to analyze these. And that might include partnering with an organization. I know you have to do clearances for folks, but like an organization like San Jose State or another professional organization that can come in and take a look to be able to do some analysis for you. Because I do think there's a lot of information we miss by not being able to look at it in aggregate. So that would be my recommendation, that we give you an opportunity to see what kind of partner can assist you with that and come back to us in a few months with a recommendation. And also what kind of data you would be looking for. I think, understanding how what we're doing does really impact behavior or not is along the lines of the kind of issues we'd want to be able to take a look at. Thank you. And then on the ETA issue, I know that probably goes to public safety and justice. And how often do you report on JMS on that? Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Supervisor.
That's all right. I was just asking how often, and is the JMS project going to Public Safety and Justice Committee?
I think it's going to the full board.
What I would just recommend is that there be a body, it should be Public Safety and Justice, that gets an annual update on this, because you're going to want people to be paying attention to both the expenditure and the timeline so that it happens.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the only comment I have here is there have been some report of folks alleging that the restrictive housing basically becomes a solitary confinement practices. Now, there have been various lawsuits and people saying that they've been not let out for multiple days, like one says of 9 days, one alleged being 7 months, and only able to spend some out of cell time for window of cell called the box. Anyways, there's just a whole bunch of these type of issues. I just want to make sure we understand how that works, and maybe you could get that back to us off agenda report on the sheriff Bender. Would that be okay?
Captain Duran is gonna respond.
Yeah, hi. So in regards to administrative management or restrictive housing, we place individuals in that type of housing based on incidents that are outlined in the consent decree. So basically it's acts of violence. In regards to their out of cell time, we do follow every individual that's placed in that type of housing to ensure that the out of cell time meets the out of cell time outlined in the consent decree, which includes coming out of your cell every day for a period of time. Part of what we do as well is we share the information of all inmates placed in administrative management with county council and with the prison law office. So we give them all the data, we give them all the names, we give them all the reasons. And what they do is they basically audit us, come into our facilities, and we give them access to each of those individuals to discuss with them the reasons they were placed in there, to discuss with them how much out of cell time that they're receiving. And then what we do is we share information regarding the incident with the prison law office, just to show that reason for placement meets the consent decree, and that the out of cell time numbers meet the out of cell time outlined in the consent decree. So yeah, I think all that data that where we had complaints regarding out of cell time, I think all of that's being looked into by our monitors, and we haven't heard any issues about us not making or hitting the times that we're required to.
So when you talk about out of cell time, do they go to somewhere there's the outdoor, or they can at least see the outside, or it could be outside, just go to another room that has no window?
So when it comes to administrative management, we do have set locations. So those set locations, you come out into a pod, a giant pod that has windows, and then you do have access to the sun deck. You just have to ask, and we'll escort you to the sun deck, which has, it's basically almost all open there, and you can see, depending on what side of the building you're on, you have a view and you get fresh air. So we do give access to both the day room. We give them time in both because the day room actually has access to a shower, a telephone, a TV, and a hot water pot. And then a lot of times they like to split their time outside and get the fresh air. So it's a combination of both based on what they request.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anything else, Supervisor Chavez, on item number 10?
No, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
So I would, I know we made a lot of comments and you probably want to take public speakers, but for their benefit, I would make a motion that all items where there's an agree that there be an average 90-day report out, that Sheriff Bender, Undersheriff, Bender will meet with the auditors and his team to review and verify what's agreed to, and that all other timelines are as stated by the board during this discussion, and all other steps are as stated by the board in this discussion, and that would be my motion.
And I'll go and second it, and I'll go and open up the public hearing. How many speakers do we have, I think?
We currently have, it's hard to tell. We have somebody who's raising their hand, but it's also lowering. It looks like we have one speaker.
Okay, let's go ahead and do it for 3 minutes. And as I said, if you could use less than 3 minutes, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, one moment, please, while we get the timer up. The next speaker is Irvish. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking. Irvish, are you there?
Yep. Thank you
Go
very
ahead.
much, thank you very much to Board of Supervisors, and as well as Chairperson, Vice Chairperson, County Sheriff, and as well as the audit team. I wanted to specifically mention about the government operations, the government financial operations accounting and reporting. On a first come first basis, when any fund accounting that is being created as a part of the principles of a governmental GAAP, the fund accountings are required to be demonstrated within the two funds. One is the government funds, which are associated with the funding received from the legislative resources, such as tax revenue and appropriations, and second are the proprietary funds, which allows the agency to collect itself through the service or users fees. For example, this funds includes the monies that's from licensing fees, usage fees, utilities fees, taxations, and as well as the fiduciary funds that are the pension and retirement investments. So, having said that, being a part of a government operation, what is the most important factor that is required to be factorized when creating the different appropriation fund? There is a term called a port barrel spending that is required to be established in order to completely segregate the funding for the legislative bills to implement. In the same way, when government funds, proprietary funds, and fiduciary funds are being created, there are a set of a section that is being created to provide the cost allocation and activity-based costing process, instead of just providing the direct budgeting of a government funding of the federal resources and putting those federal resources into state, county, and local resources. Now, another part of financial operation that is something as important to include is to make sure that creating encumbrances in the government budgeting versus a port barrel spending. Now, creating these funds as well as putting those funds appropriately in different budgeting sections would allow county to appropriate that what specific segregation is required to be made when there are 107 commissions which are reporting to County of Santa Clara requires a set of a funding as a part of a non-profit organization, commendation and proclamation fundings, as well as non-granting fundings and granting fundings that is required to be assigned to, as a part of a work that is required to be accomplished for the budgeting of a different commission. Also, the segregation helps government and financial operations to manage the auditing in a better way when such government accounting standard board is being created as well. The government accounting standard board, which is an independent, non-political entity, helps government report their finances in a transparent manner as well. Thank you very much for allowing the opportunity to speak.
That concludes our requests to speak.
Thank you. All right, so we go ahead and move to item number on 5, right? Yes.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair, before we move on, we do need to do a roll call vote on that item.
Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. Close the public hearing and let me go ahead and let's take on the vote on that one. I apologize. Please go ahead and take a roll.
No problem. Vice Chairperson Chavez
Yes.
and Chairperson Lee.
Yes, as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for a reminder. All right, item number 5, which is the management audit for the custody health staffing study. And I believe, let's see, besides Cheryl, I believe Dr. Day is here as well. All right, on this one, let's see if Cheryl, do you have anything to add or should we just, go ahead.
We have a very brief presentation.
Okay, go ahead, please.
That would be delivered by Cody. Thank you.
Hello, committee chairperson, Cody Zareb, principal analyst with the Management Audit Division. As Cheryl said, we did conduct a staffing study of the Custody Health Services Department. We were originally asked to undertake this staffing study back in October 2019, but due to delays to COVID and other changes in the department, we primarily completed the study between October 2020 and March 2021. And the final report was submitted on July 1st of 2021. We had 4 main findings related to staffing and primarily nursing staffing. And we had 2 recommendations to address those findings. I'm happy to go into more detail. The department did agree to both recommendations, and I'm happy to take additional questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you. All right, and let me see, Supervisor Chavez, do you have any questions on this item?
Yes, I have a kind of a basic question, which is, my understanding is that Harvey Rose, you were not able to conduct a shift-by-shift workload analysis. And I'm wondering, is that a best practice in all healthcare settings? And is there a reason that perhaps this setting would be treated differently?
It is a recommended best practice. Obviously, correctional health is a bit of its own kind of standards in terms of health settings, and is usually considered relatively unique. But we really saw no reason not to conduct a shift-by-shift pattern analysis to inform staffing workload levels and the design of workload measures.
Oh, I'm sorry. So you were able to do it?
No, sorry, we were not able to do it based on the information we had. So instead, what we did, we used information basically provided by the department in terms of each of their shift descriptions. So there weren't shift-specific kind of patterns. So we used descriptions of the various shift duties and the staffing assigned to each one. And that was our kind of demand. We treated that as our kind of the department's workload model, staffing model. And then we used data from the Employment Services Agency on actual hours worked by staff and extra help staff to determine how many FTEs were actually assigned by position. But because of the information that was provided, we were unable to do a shift-by-shift analysis.
It's hard to know how to assess the value of the audit based on what you're saying. And Dr. Day, perhaps you could give a perspective on that.
Sure. And good afternoon, supervisors. And thank you first, Cody and Cheryl, for the audit. And conceptually, I think custody health services agree that we do need to provide a staffing model. However, as you have mentioned, there is no national jail health staffing model that has been adapted and or adopted across the correctional health care. There's also certain other logistical factors that need to be considered to include challenges in the environment, facility factors, span of control. Elmwood by itself is about 116 acres. We have aging facilities, we have space compaction. And so all of these go into the decision-making on how to gauge staffing for the population that we serve. We also need to look at the acuity of the patients. We also need to look at the acuity of the patients and the risk stratification of those patients based on acuity in an aging population and the chronic care conditions that patients are coming in with. That does require a different staffing pattern. And staffing measures and staffing models are basically designed around the patient acuity and patient risk factors. So those things need to go into effect as well. Now, the staffing study started prior to my tenure and started prior to my tenure coming on. And so I do wish that I was on the front end of that staffing pattern. However, when I did look at the assessment, there is a certain skill set when you do a staffing study. That study does include a skill set, not only with mechanisms to have reliable data to conduct that staffing study, but also to be able to do that internal measurement and that internal staff monitoring, if you will. And so what I determined is that we did not have that assessment and we did not have that skill set in-house. And so part of what Cody had mentioned too, some of the leading practices, and we say leading practices because best practices tend to become obsolete fairly quickly. But some of the leading practices and the common methods of calculating and doing a staffing study does include a staff analysis, task analysis, time and motion studies, productivity, auditing outcome analysis, process analysis and efficiencies, and then comparative analysis of sister facilities that are like sister facilities. Those things need to be taken into consideration too. Part of this, however, is that the staffing study over the time period, I think the comparative was from 2017 to 2020, but then in the last year, 2 years, 2019 to current, we've been under the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's a whole different dynamic that has been brought into the custody health services and how we provide services. And there is an additional burden to having to manage patients with COVID, doing surveillance testing, asymptomatic surveillance testing. Now we're doing vaccination clinics. So that's a different workload. So I think that gives a different dynamic to what the staffing looks like, and then how do you true that up? I also will mention that over the years, the census for the patients that we have in custody health services has been as high as 3,800, if not close to 4,000. We didn't make any adjustments in the staffing since that time. And right now, today, we are at an average about 2,400 patients. And so we're almost 75% fewer patients, but we have not made staffing adjustments to the numbers that we have. I do want to mention, however, too, that there are some compactions just with vacancies, and some of the overtime use is because we have 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week care, 365 days a year. And some of the vacancy rates are not because of the want of not filling them, but there is a challenge in bringing staff into this setting. We are a niche population. We are a niche specialty service. We are a niche delivery of healthcare. And so we do need to do more targeted recruitment, and we do need to do targeted recruitment in a market that has a potential yield to bring staff in. We have been aggressively recruiting for the last 6 months, if not longer, to bring in staff to fill every vacancy, to include every nursing vacancy that we have. And the yield has not been there. And so part of that, we do need to look at the strategies, the recruitment strategies on bringing staff, nursing staff in particular, but also physicians and psychiatrists and other compacted areas into this setting. And how do we recruit targeted recruitment in order to fill those vacancies? And so those are some of the salient issues that also impact staffing and staffing vacancy rates. And when you're looking at a vacancy rate, we're running about maybe a 20% vacancy rate. We're about 74% filled across all classifications for custody health services. So you do have some variability. I think the biggest hit right now is with some of the ancillary support staff. But our vacancy rate for nursing right now is about 83%. So looking at that, what I'm proposing, there are vendors out there and there are methodologies and models specifically on risk stratification and on patient chronic care disease and acuity that should drive a staffing model. Of course, patients that are the sickest patients, especially like in an infirmary, for instance, on the acute psychiatric unit, for instance, on the 8th floor, would drive a different staffing model than the general population. And so those are some of the factors we would look at. Post-COVID-19, I think we could true it up a little and we could realize what the true need is and perhaps bring in a vendor. There's several vendors out there that specialize in staffing studies and staffing models for correctional settings, especially correctional healthcare settings, taking into consideration some of the nuances, taking into consideration some of the parameters that we need to meet around consent decrees, providing adequate levels of custody and or custodial health care, and bring in those type of vendors to help get to a truer model of what the need is based again on patient makeup, populations, risk stratification, and acuity.
So based on what you've just said, Dr. Day, that here's what I would want to recommend, Supervisor Lee. I think that the two recommendations the auditors make may not address what you just laid out entirely. So I would like to say that we accept the recommendation, agreeing that you agree with that. That our expectation is that you will be able to hire an outside consultant relatively quickly to give you the support that consultant, the hiring and the work plan come back to this committee in 3 months. And I want to make sure that it's inclusive of a few things that you've raised. One is that we do start collecting workload data. 2, that the service utilization trends are aligned with the staffing levels, performance measures, but also the specialties that you just raised, I think are really critical. That that we do find a method for determining performance measures to assess quality of care, and that we develop coverage factors. Coverage. A coverage framework that's an agreed upon, best practice. And I think the point that you just raised about not having a standard in the industry, we have to delineate that from whether or not we A, want to set the standard, and B, I think have a tool that we're using to assess what that is. And then Dr. Day, I think the other issue I just want to raise is that I think the point you raised that is that I think most people don't understand is the level of acuity of your patients. They are very sick, and and also the other thing I think folks don't understand is that that people stay at such different lengths of time that that your ability to have a first interaction and then a second or a third can be all over the map. And I don't know if you are able now to track when you track utilization, given the average length of stay, there may be a comparison there to use, because I just don't want people to think that we have a continuous group of patients. You really don't. You have a moving a moving hospital. Maybe that's more inconsistent than most healthcare providers. Dr. Smith, I see your hand before I go back to Dr. Day.
Just wanted to make a couple of comments. The issue to explain more why there's not a standard best practices because it's very dependent upon the facility, the particular size of the facility, the processes of incarceration based on what custody does, and also, like, Dr. Day mentioned, based on the acuity of the population and the disease prevalence in the population. So I think it would be best if the committee suggested to us, as Dr. Day said, that we hire an outside consultant to come in with expertise to look at our staffing plans, but it won't be done in 3 months.
Yeah, for sure. I think what I just wanted to know is, could we get a partner relatively quickly?
Yeah.
That's really what I was looking at.
We'll do the best we can, but I suspect in 3 months, we'll just be able to report progress towards getting that partner. But
And
Dr. Day knows the business very well and knows all the potential partners.
I've
And
been
we'll
reaching
get
out.
somebody in as quick as we can.
You know what I was actually wondering is there, I know this is such a specialty area that you talked about, are there a group of like peers as part of a national association?
Oh, absolutely.
That would actually be,
Yeah.
that may actually be more, I mean, them with a consultant, but just to get some fresh eyes now that you've been, Dr. Day, how long have you been here now?
I've been here a year.
Okay, now on your anniversary. I mean, it may be time now that you've been here a year to have those outside set of eyes give some perspective for you along with a consultant. But yeah, that would be great. That I could make in the form of a motion, unless Dr. Day, you want to add anything else?
No, and that's the direction, Supervisor, that we're moving in. As a matter of fact, we're doing more targeted recruitment. We're doing quite a few partnerships and bringing, having those conversations with other like facilities in different counties. And so I think that we're moving in that direction in trying to find what are those, subject matter experts out there that, and part of the difference too, with a lot of these vendors is that they have worked in this arena. And they have worked in the custody health setting, the correctional setting. And so they know you have to navigate this correctional setting clearly differently than you would any other setting. You have safety and security issues. A lot of what we have to do, and we have to preface at every interview, is that we operate under a no hostage policy. And so that if there's a hostage situation, we may not negotiate for your safety.
That's right. And come join us. Right. No, I totally, get it.
It's just a different world, but we certainly can start pulling in those experts that know this field and how we navigate it.
That would be great. Thank you, Dr. Day.
Sure.
Thank you, Supervisor Lee.
Thank you, Supervisor Travis. So right now there's contracts right now with the Self-Pay Emergency Physicians Medical Group and also the Tradition Psychology Group. We know the medical group is 24/7, but the psychology group for those services is only Monday through Friday, 8 to 6. On weekends and on evenings, how are the psychiatry help for being covered if they are not being contracted? And this
And,
go ahead.
Sure. And Supervisor, we do have the TBH. They are on the weekends as well. And so they do work on the weekends. They work in the booking setting. So we do have quite a bit of coverage with TBH. And as you know, TBH contract has come about simply because we have a hard time recruiting psychiatrists. And so what we're doing is we keep 5 psychiatrist positions vacant to offset the cost of that contract. And so that's another compaction area, is just to bring in psychiatry, and that's a nationwide and national shortage. But we do have TBH on the weekends. They do work on 8A over the weekend, and then they also work in booking.
Okay. There was some allegations saying that inmates waited more than 10 days to receive medical care. That doesn't sound right. Is there any truth to any of that, or is it something to do with some nursing shortage or some specific situation where people have to wait 7, even 10 days to get medical care.
Right. We did have some studies that we were looking at where there was a wait time, and that wait time was up to 10 days. And so we are taking a look at that and seeing what are those factors that are, either impeding patients to be seen in a more timely way. And so we have met on those things. We looked at what those barriers are to access to care. And there's certain barriers to access to care. There's several to include not only the COVID environment, then you have a patient where they may be scheduled to be seen, then they subsequently have a court case. And so then you need to reschedule them. So there's a lot of different barriers that we're looking at for that, but access to care, timely care, and then the parameters that we have set up with the consent decree. And so that is outside of that parameter, and we're working on that.
Okay. Also, another question regarding the infirmary at the Main Jail North that's being under construction.
Sure.
Do you know when that would be completed?
When it was first scheduled and we made the decision to move to Elmwood from Main Jail so that the constructions can happen, it was projected to be about 160 days, 169 days. So we're looking at probably, there were a few delays in the construction. So we're probably looking at more November, December.
November, before the end of this year then, for sure.
Okay, before the end of the year.
Okay, good. All right, thank you.
Sure.
There was a discussion, actually this was from a tour I had at Elmwood regarding some possible question of maybe putting some type of a ultrasound machine over at Elmwood. Has there been any discussion or any movement on that?
And I'm not sure under what context you're speaking.
Yeah, because when we're doing the visiting with some of the doctors providing care, they talk about it would be great if they could actually have the ultrasound machine at Elmwood, which they don't have currently. They even asked for a dialysis machine, but that was being discussed. I just wasn't sure if this is has there been any discussion ever since during my visit or something that we need to bring up separately.
I would have to back into that. Supervisor, I wasn't aware of that conversation.
Okay.
So,
All right. Okay. If you can get back to us, ask them now. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
certainly. Okay, thank you.
All right. And I think that's what I have, and I'm ready for a motion, Supervisor Chavez.
So I would move that we receive receive the audit with the additions included by both you and I, and thank Dr. Day and the auditing staff. And that would be my motion.
Now second it. Go ahead and open the public hearing. Do we have anybody in public who would like to speak?
We have no public speakers, Mr. Chair.
I'll go ahead and close it and then ready for the vote.
Vice Chairperson Chavez,
Yes.
Chairperson Lee.
Yes, as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to item number 6, which is received the verbal report from the county exec and also facilities and fleet regarding fairgrounds master planning process. Okay, and let's see, who do we have presenting the report today?
I'll be presenting. This is Glenn Williams.
Oh, Mr. Williams, good afternoon. Yes.
If you wish to see my face, I'm apparently blocked at this point, so you'd have to allow me. Thank you.
No worries. We can hear you loud and clear. Go ahead, Mr. Williams.
There we
Oh, I
go.
can see you now. Yes.
There we go. Good afternoon,
afternoon.
Chairman Lee, Supervisor Chavez. I'm happy to be here today to provide you with a brief verbal update on our progress with proposals for the development of the county fairgrounds. Beginning with FGOC's October meeting, administration will provide a monthly update on the master planning of the county fairgrounds to FGOC instead of the previous quarterly report. As you're aware, the Office of the County Executive and County Council are actively negotiating 2 proposed developments at the fairgrounds. One from the San Jose earthquakes to develop 25 acres as a state-of-the-art soccer complex, and another from American Cricket Enterprises to develop 12 acres for an international cricket stadium. Administration, County Council, and a representative from Fairgrounds Management Corp have recently held 2 negotiating sessions with the San Jose earthquakes. We have identified those items in the earthquakes proposal with which the county can agree, and those items that still need to be resolved. The earthquakes have requested that the county provide a written response to its letter of intent, which administration is currently preparing and we will be, currently preparing and will be sending to the earthquakes as quickly as possible. We have been making good progress in our negotiations with the earthquakes, and we look forward to continued negotiations with them to address all the remaining issues. Administration, County Council, and FMC also have held 3 negotiating sessions with American Cricket Enterprises, who have been responsive to the county's concerns. One of the main hurdles we are still addressing is parking. In order to accommodate a new stadium on 12 acres of county land, parking structures will need to be constructed on an adjoining 2-acre parcel in order to both replace the existing surface parking for the fairgrounds and to provide adequate parking for events at the new stadium. Administration is in the process of approving a parking study from a nationally recognized firm to evaluate the construction costs, the demand for parking with the new stadium, supportable parking rates, operating revenues, and how the parking structure or structures could be financed. The county and American Cricket Enterprises are also in the process of determining the elements of an exclusive negotiating agreement, an ENA, to identify the necessary steps and timetable to get to a ground lease. We anticipate bringing an ENA with American Cricket Enterprises to the board for its approval by year-end. With respect to both proposals, one of the very important steps in any development proposal is to engage with and get feedback from the local community. We intend to engage in that process prior to any formal action by the board after there is more clarity on the proposals. In earlier efforts to source proposals, the county reached out extensively to the adjoining neighbors. What we heard consistently was broad support for developments at the fairgrounds to replace the industrial uses and the accompanying dust and noise that are currently there. While we expect to hear questions and concerns, we anticipate support for the recreational uses that are currently being proposed. Finally, we are also scheduling meetings with the City of San Jose, the VTA, and the San Jose Sports Authority to discuss ways in which we can cooperate in further development of the fairgrounds. That's the end of my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. And ask Supervisor Chavez, do you have any question for Mr. Williams regarding the report on the fairgrounds?
I just have 3 issues that I want to raise. And Glenn, to not put you on the spot, I'm just going to direct these to Dr. Smith. One is that I would like to request that our discussions with the earthquakes and with Major League Cricket are expedited for a number of reasons, and am very interested in seeing whether or not we can bring these to fruition in the October, November timeframe. Second, when our next report comes forward, I'm interested in the indoor sports complex process and also the agricultural center and the marketplace, the international marketplace that's also being considered. In particular, I'm interested in the footprint of the land uses coming back to us in October.
Supervisor will endeavor to get it back to you as quickly as we can. I can't guarantee agreement on contracts before October, but we'll get you as best we can, all the information we can at the October meeting.
Thank you. Those are all my comments.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Chavez. So along with the questions on the cricket, I certainly would like to find out more about this parking structure that you're talking about, since obviously if we're going to host cricket, there will be a huge amount of attendees, and that's what necessitates the building of parking structure. Am I correct, Mr. Williams?
Absolutely. We have approximately 1,400 spaces on the 14 acres that is there now. And there are occasions during large events that all 1,400 spaces are in fact utilized. So we have to very carefully determine what the parking situation would be with whatever parking spaces can be built on that site and what other parking locations at the rest of the fairgrounds could be used to accommodate any overflow. So it's not an easy calculation, and you have to make a lot of reasonable projections about what your activities will be, what your occupancies will be, the utilization, and the rates that people are going to be willing to pay.
Okay, and how many spaces do you think you'll be needed when you build this parking structure? Like a couple thousand more spaces, or?
That's what we're doing the study for.
Okay, gotcha.
And my anticipation is that we will have to utilize parts of the fairgrounds main parcel to augment whatever the structures are there.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. And do we have any idea, well, as we know that we've been using the COVID, this is a COVID-19 vaccination testing site at the fairgrounds, right? Are we planning to do any type of anticipated facility designs or layout changes? Given the fact that we've been using it, because obviously we don't know how long we'll be able to use that for. It depends on COVID, right? So any type of movement that we'll be looking at potentially moving these spaces, or we use them exactly as we are right now?
Well, given the need to, make it through CEQA and other development issues for any large project like either of the earthquakes, we are all hopeful that by the time there's actually any construction for a new event facility, COVID will be in our rearview mirror. But of course, we have no way of confirming what it's going to be like 2 years from now or 3 years from now. But at this point, there's no anticipation that there'll be a conflict. All of the planning efforts, all of the entitlement efforts, all of those can be done while we are still utilizing all of the current facilities for our COVID response.
Okay. All right, thank you. And that's all I have for the time being. Let's see, do I have a motion to accept this report? Supervisor Chavez?
So moved.
Cal seconded. And I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Do we have anybody in the public who would like to speak?
We do. We have one speaker currently, sir.
Sure, we'll go ahead and give 3 minutes.
All right, one moment, please. The next speaker is Richard Scott. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you very much. I won't bore you with my background again. Nationally, statewide, in Santa Clara County, people have declared homelessness the top issue or near the top issue. I'm not aware of any cricket emergency or any soccer emergency. The Board of Supervisors should have the political courage to use the fairgrounds to establish an Austin-like community for the homeless in our county. Every time the city goes to do something, at first the city's people on the board say, yeah. Then when it comes to, it might be in their district, they say, no. You could solve a major emergency by designating the fairgrounds as a homeless community and find the people to run it appropriately. Please do it. Thank you. And I say one more thing. Every person in my community, Willow Glen, who is notorious for not wanting homeless people anywhere, all say, let's use the fairground. You would get such tremendous votes for using the fairgrounds for homeless people that, you could be reelected forever. Thank you.
Speaker is Irvish. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you very much to Board of Supervisors, Chair and Vice Chairperson, as well as Asset Management County staff. I want to specifically mention about the government finance statistics with the international monetary funds that is required to be managed with the government finance operations. Well, when any cash data transaction or the economic flows that is being participated as a part of an international monetary fund, typically the record of an expense and the resources that is being utilized, they are delivered as a part of a number of goods that has been contracted as a part of a services that is being taken. Now it is also to make sure that such revenue, when it is being generated, are required to be recorded as a liability to government and is exchanged only when the payment is made. It is also to make sure that there is a requirement to have an analytical framework as a part of a statement of operations when creating any economic flows, opening balance sheet and a closing balance sheet. Now that provides the statement of sources, uses of case, net operating income, and the net closing income for the government and county operations, as well as a part of asset management and development. The government operations are required to manage the net acquisition of a financial asset, net incurrence of liabilities. When any asset managements are being developed with the domestic and foreign transaction, there's always going to be a differentiation as the International Monetary Fund that takes effect with the foreign transaction, whereas the domestic transaction, there is a direct federal goods and services, as well as the fixed capitals and subsidies and the different expenses and the revenues that comes into the affecting net worth of the transaction. To make sure that the analytical framework works according to the lending and the borrowing of the operations, it is to make sure that the taxes are also being compensated along with the asset management that is being established as a part of a government and finance operations. Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment.
That concludes our request to speak.
Thank you very much. So we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and then we'll go and take a vote.
Vice Chairperson Chavez.
Yes.
And Chairperson Lee.
Yes, as well.
Thank you.
And I'm going to make the announcement to go ahead and recess to the closed session right now. And let's see, let me go meet the closed session language here. Okay.
Supervisor.
Yes, go ahead, County Council, please.
You may want to first see if there's any public comment for closed session, and then I can.
Thank you. All right, let's do that first. So is there any public who would like to make comments on the closed session?
We have no speakers, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing on the closed session. And County Council, please.
The committee will meet in closed session to discuss item number 8 as listed on the agenda for the September 21, 2021 FGOC meeting. And I'm going to go ahead. We normally need to come back out to make an announcement out of closed session of any reportable actions. But in order to assist the clerk of the board staff, given that this particular item under the statute cannot have any reportable actions, I'm just going to go ahead now with the committee's permission and just say there will be no reportable actions taken in this closed session, given the particular noticed item that is included for the closed session. So that way we don't need to come back.
Okay, so in that case, I wouldn't have to recess. Actually, we could just go and adjourn this meeting to the next regular meeting at the Finance and Government Operations Committee on Thursday, October 14th, 2021 at 2 p.m. Right? Thank you very much. And so this meeting is now adjourned, and we'll go move to the closed session. Thank you.
Recording stopped.